Buongiorno e benvenuti. The State of the Euros sobre a State of Mind. Good morning and welcome to the State of the Euros on a State of Mind. If you couldn't figure that one out, and if my fantastic linguistic skills didn't give it away, Italy are the champions of Europe once again after a 1-0 draw in normal time, a stalemate in the additional period, and a nail-biting penalty shootout in which England missed 3 spot kicks in a row to send football to Rome instead of home. I'm Sean McGill, and joining me are 2 makeshift Italian stallions, Struan Garvey and Jack Donnelly. How are we, gentlemen?
Doing very well, mate. Had a great night, and happy to be here today.
I'm also doing very well. It was a nice wee game of football last night.
It would have been quite a different... I was thinking that in my bed last night. Like, I just felt quite content in my bed. Like, I was enjoying... Scottish football Twitter was on good form last night, as we always love to see. And it would have been quite a different night. I think I would have had to stay off social media. And I don't know if I really would have wanted to have been here this morning. The chat would have been unbearable, Jack.
No, to be fair, I think it would just be dour, to be honest. It would just be us just going through an England victory and not really wanting to add much to what happened already. So I'm quite glad it turned out the way it did, so we can actually dissect it and be happy about it.
I'm going to try... Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can't hear either of you, which is really... I can see your mouth moving, and it looks lovely, Jack, and it's probably the best analysis you've ever given is whatever you just said, because I can't hear it. What to do is... Jack, if you could talk to Struan about Luke Shaw opening the scoring for England, I'm going to disappear and then I will reappear.
Right,
as
I
if
can
by
do that.
magic.
Yep.
So if you could do that for me, I hope you're saying yes, because I don't know what you're saying, but I'm going to go. So I'll hopefully see you soon.
So we're in this situation now, Struan, where it's just the pair of us. A bit of a makeshift last minute substitution while we wait for Sean to return. To be fair, I had the same problem when I first came into the studio, so it might just be Stream Deck playing up a little bit today. So we'll hopefully have Sean back soon. But Struan, the tournament's over, and what a tournament it's been.
Oh, I've loved it, to be honest. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yeah, I can.
Right, we're good. Yeah, I loved it, to be honest. I can't believe how quickly it's gone. It's been over a month since it began. You know, obviously from our point of view, Scotland qualified, first time in our lifetime that Scotland were at a major international tournament. And I think even when Scotland did get eliminated, I think it was still a really enjoyable tournament to watch. I'd call the games watchable. You know, even when there wasn't a star name in the mix, I felt I could watch any game. I felt it was entertaining. There were some great moments throughout it, great goals, just really good atmospheres as well at certain fixtures. I think there's quite a lot of breakthrough players as well, quite a lot of people who have put their name on the big stage. I'm sure we'll get onto a few of them later on in the show. But yeah, I've just really enjoyed it. What about yourself?
Honestly, mate, it genuinely feels just like yesterday that wee car was rolling out the match ball at the Stadio Olimpico in Rome on the opening night with Turkey versus Italy, and thought this is going to be a fantastic tournament from the get-go. Just with that, we only saw the car twice more, which was an absolute travesty. Everyone watching this show knows my appreciation for that wee car, so we don't really need to go much more into it. But you're absolutely right. I think every single game was watchable. I feel like there was a narrative in every single game. There was something to take away from it. You would have someone, I don't know, who can we say? Goran Pandev scoring for North Macedonia, becoming the oldest goal scorer at the tournament. That's a great moment. Like you'll remember stuff like that. Of course, there are bigger moments and the more memorable moments, I mean, away from the tournament, but still involving it. You think of the Denmark situation with the unfortunate events with Christian Eriksen. That's always going to live in society's mind, potentially not even just football fans' mind, because of how impactful those pictures were. But we're at the end of it, and we're kind of right back into the foray of it with the newly crowned Premier Sports Cup up here in Scotland. So we're not taking a break from the football. We'll get to that on other shows on this network, I'm sure. But we're here to talk about Euro 2020, and we've only really got the final to discuss from last night. So Sean wanted me to discuss Luke Shaw with you. I'm always up for a discussion about Luke Shaw with you, and I know you're always up for a discussion about Luke Shaw with absolutely anyone. So he opened the scoring, and it almost, I think people were deflated from the get-go, but in my mind, I just had Trippier versus Croatia in 2018, an early scoring fullback in a massive game for England. I mean, it was a fantastic goal to start it off, though.
Yeah, as you say, there was sort of that element of they did score early in the World Cup semi-final. Was it going to be the same scenario this time? And it did turn out to be in the end. And I think of course, it's never good to concede early. It's quite deflating. But then at the same time, to concede so early, you've got the entire match to make a comeback. And with a team as strong as Italy are, as experienced as they are, you always felt they were going to get chances throughout the game. And I think in the end, that Luke Shaw shot was one of only 2 England had throughout the whole 120 minutes on target. So at the end of the day, it was quite a perfect for Italy that it was almost done and out of the way with. But it was a really good goal. The ball from Trippier was excellent to pick out Luke Shaw at the back post. I can't believe that the goal England scored against Italy came from fullback to fullback. I thought that was really out of nowhere. I think it was Shaw's first ever goal for England as well, and the quickest in the European history for the final anyway. So
for the final, yeah.
Yeah, it was
Hello.
Pretty good. Hello.
That's just Sean making sure that we know he's back, just cutting in there.
Just in case you... Sorry, I did think Struan was done there. I do apologise. But I managed to get through the whole tournament without busting out the big headphones. The radio news headphones, as you guys might know.
That are absolutely the radio news headphones, they are.
But yeah, they're here. They're here now to make sure I can listen to you guys. And what I heard there was some very good analysis. I didn't make that connection between Kieran Trippier's free kick in the semi-final back in 2018 to that the final yesterday, but it's a good link, and I think that it probably did put... I thought it was like Jack, I thought that's a long time to be holding on to a lead, and despite the fact that England have been very solid defensively, we know that how good Italy have been in an attacking sense. That maybe it wasn't the case. Struan, just we're talking about Luke Shaw there, can I ask you a very quick question? Who is the best left back in the world?
Andrew Robertson.
Thank you very much. Jack, do you can jump on that as well? I'm sure you agree.
Oh yeah, Captain Fantastic, mate. There's no two words about it.
Some of the chat this week has been ridiculous on Luke Shaw. A very good player nonetheless. And Jack, as I was kind of alluding to there, Italy have dazzled us at times this tournament with their attacking football, but there was something very sort of passive about them in that first 45 minutes. Were you concerned that this was one of those cases where a team gets themselves into a final and then changes tact on the big occasion, or doesn't quite sort of live up to the heights before, they almost sort of abandon what got them there?
Yeah, there was that concern, especially as the first half went on and they didn't really look like they were going to push for anything. But I kept myself positive because I was reminded of two things, and I kept those two things in mind. The first thing, if you're going to concede, you're better conceding as early as possible, because then you've got the majority of the amount of time to get back into the game and get another goal. And the second thing, Italy can score from anywhere. That's what we've seen from them across this tournament. I think the only team to have 5 players score at least 2 goals at European Championships in a tournament anyway. So goals can come from anywhere in this team. And I was holding out on that, even though Immobile had yet another torrid game up front and really didn't offer anything. I was still hopeful of the fact that you might see a Barella pop up, a Verratti, Insigne, a Chiesa, someone like that would end up grabbing a goal. And although that kind of hope was fading as halftime drew in, I did keep the faith, and thankfully it paid off.
We will be talking about the positives of Italy, right? But Ciro Immobile is not getting enough stick compared to my man Alvaro Morata. Like, Alvaro Morata has scored goals this tournament, big goals as well, and I think his general play has been pretty decent, just because he's missed a few sitters, whereas Immobile has been anonymous for me, and apart from those first 2 games where he scored, he literally is only good at football in Italy. I mean, he went to Dortmund and Sevilla and had pretty torrid times, but then at Torino and Lazio, he looks like a world beater. So he just needs to stay in Italy, I think. And if Italy have away games, just don't bother going. I'd say just Olimpico only would be my get. And I want to talk about Federico Chiesa, Struan. And I'm seeing some comments coming in about people very high on the Juventus winger. The Dude Abides says, with Messi and Ronaldo needing retirement, step 4th case. That's a big claim. I'm going to butcher that pronunciation. Mark
McGonagall, surely.
McGonagall, I don't know. Go for it, Jack. Chiesa reminded me a little bit of the way Kaká played, dribbling, and his pace is immense. Guts Goes Berserk says Chiesa looked like the most dangerous player. Definitely Kaká-like. And sure, it did seem like Chiesa was going to be the driving force if anything was to happen for Italy in this game. How impressed were you by him, and how concerned were you? I mean, I keep saying concerned as if I know for a fact you guys were supporting Italy, which to me is very petty. I can't believe anybody would do that. We're all in the same boat here, are we not? But yeah, Struan, sorry about that, Mark. But yes, Struan, how impressed were you and how concerned were you when he left the field with his injury?
I've been so impressed with him, to be honest. I think the moment he came on and he scored that goal against Austria in extra time, I think he just sort of cemented himself as being the best player in that Italian front three. And obviously there's a lot of talent there. The likes of Insigne has been very good, Berardi as well. But I think Chiesa has been absolutely excellent. I think quite a lot of people who have followed Italian football this past season will know how good he has been for Juventus, obviously sort of overshadowed by the likes of Ronaldo, Dybala in that team. But he's been absolutely phenomenal the whole way out. Throughout it. It was great for Fiorentina as well. And when he got injured, it was right after the end of one of these darting runs where he dribbles past so many players and he gets through. And I was just really concerning for him when he stays down and you think, oh, if anybody's going to make something out of nothing, it's going to be him. You know, for Italy, he's played on the left, the right, even as the centre forward as well. When Immobile went off, he's just been the real danger man up front. And it was just such a shame to see him go off, to be honest, because he was just looking really dangerous. I'm sure Stones, Maguire, Walker, all of them were happy to see him going off the pitch because he was just causing them so much trouble the whole time. And every team that he played in the tournament, to be honest, every goal he scored was absolutely fantastic, to be honest as well. I just keep thinking back to the one against Austria in extra time, just the touch and control and finish. It was amazing.
Yeah, he scored big goals this tournament, definitely. And speaking of big goals, Jack, you've got to describe Leonardo Bonucci's as just that. And it was perhaps more fitting for Italy teams of old. I mean, we've talked about their attacking play this year, but that was a scrappy goal. But it showed that they still have that in them, that despite this more sort of possession-based attacking football, they can still grind it out and come up in the key moments. And it was a game that it was a goal, that had definitely been coming and sort of seemed to really swing the game in Italy's favour.
No, it absolutely did. You're bang on. It definitely did swing the momentum of the match at that point. But these kind of gritty performances, these kind of scrappy goals, that's the foundations of Italy. That's what they've been built on. I mean, you get two absolute warriors in central defence in Leonardo Bonucci and Giorgio Chiellini, who I'd imagine we might get on to a bit later. You're always kind of expecting that one of these goals might come off. You might get a goal like that at some point in the tournament, and it was a perfect moment for them to do so. I mean, it's a great save onto the post by Jordan Pickford from the initial effort, and then Bonucci just got that awareness to just dart in and smash it into the empty net to level things up. And I love his celebration anytime he scores, the circle in the face and him having a bit of a screw face while he does it. It was exactly what Italy needed, and at the exact moment that they needed it, and then they didn't really look back after that point.
And Struan, let's keep talking about Bonucci and his centre-half partner, Giorgio Chiellini, because it was just a monumental performance from them. I mean, that sounds funny because I don't feel like England offered too much, but I don't think, I mean, we've spoke about it, that they only had 6 shots in the game, that the combined XG from the front three, Mason Mount, Raheem Sterling, Harry Kane, was 0. They didn't register anything. Thanks for that, Jack, for visualising that for us.
Absolutely, mate, that's my job.
But even though they maybe didn't seem like they were getting into too many attacking positions or really penetrating Italy, maybe they would have if it wasn't for those colossal performances from Chiellini and Bonucci, who just sort of, and I think it was a comment earlier on that I'm going to try and find there. It's from Guts Goes Berserk again, who said Chiellini was immense. When the Italians went on the offensive, they showed how to play a high line without speedy centre-backs, just good position and decision-making. That's the thing that I think a lot of us saw that as the weak point in this Italian team, the fact that quick forwards, speedy forwards, one of the two, better, could sort of get in behind this high line, but they showed, like the comments saying there, that positioning can mean so much, and it was just such an impressive performance from two players who we've seen do it for so long, but they came up on the big stage again, Struan.
Yeah, totally. I mean, what the point there about movement, not all defending is actually physical contact. So much of it is about reading the game and just stopping them. And I think Bonucci and Chiellini are absolutely excellent at that. I think another point is at the start of the tournament, Florenzi and Spinazzola were going to be the two fullbacks, and both of them picked up injuries. So come the end of it, it was the second choice fullbacks as well as the two centre halves. So you possibly think the defence as a whole on the sides was also weaker because of that. But I think Chiellini and Bonucci were absolutely excellent. I mean, there was one challenge that Chiellini made on Saka in the box where it looked like Saka had made it past him, and he managed to get his leg round and kick the ball away, and it was just phenomenal, that sort of defending. And then there's the one just before the 90th minute, which I think has become a meme all over social media, where I think it was the only mistake Chiellini had made in the game. And it looked like Saka was about to burst away, and Chiellini just took the tactical foul. And you just think, yeah, that's an experienced defender. I mean, it's horrible to see. It's not nice to commit a tactical foul such as that, but so many professional defenders are going to do that. And it was just the way they played the whole game to us. They were absolutely superb. They didn't let anything go past them. 36 and 34. I think Chiellini turns 37 quite soon as well. Actually, they were just immense, to be honest. The experience. I think back to the Belgian game as well, where Italy just sort of played it out, maybe a bit unprofessional, some people would say, but it's just the defending, isn't it? The way we're able to see off any danger. And I think Harry Kane's only time in the 18-yard box was the penalty, other than any set pieces, which didn't really come to much from England point of view. So I just think they just deserve so much credit, to be honest, and praise, because they didn't really do much throughout the 90th minute. That no last-ditch tackles, no anything like that. But they didn't have to make any last-ditch tackles because of how well they defended. And I think possibly people like Jorginho as well sitting in front of them do deserve praise too. I
was not aware of that Chiellini chokeslam being a meme. I did not know at Sean McGilley.
That's so shameless, but I respect you for it.
A chokeslam.
Yeah, I was going to look at it. I just love it so much. I think it's hilarious. Like, just the way I was laughing at the time, and just all the pictures of it after. Like, his jelly just dragged him back.
Poor boy.
I mean, I know, what a shame, but I mean, you've got to do what you've got to do. He's got a trophy now.
If definition of a tactical foul is anything, it's just that, isn't it? He's past me. Yeah, come back. You're not breaking away.
I would have loved if you tried to argue it as well. That would have capped it off. It's just like sort of like, what?
I got the ball.
Jack, I know you're particularly high on Mr. Chiellini this morning. We could maybe expect something on Energy Sport about the man himself. But talk to me about him. And I mean, it was even the boos for the national anthem, and you just see him there with that big smile on his face. He seemed so calm, but at the same time so fired up. Like he just, I don't know. He's a great man, a great footballer. So share your thoughts.
See, liquid fire is what I would use to describe Chiellini, because he's just so cool, but he's so ready for it at the exact same time. When you see him, you see he's got that smile on his face, his eyes are closed, and then he just belts out Fratelli d'Italia every time. And I can't remember the Italian translation of it, but at the end of it, he turns around to his team applauding and screams that we're ready to die. And that is just that monster mentality that translates throughout the entire team. I mean, you see him chest bumping Donnarumma when he makes a save, slapping the back of Bonucci's head, or doing something similar whenever one of them makes a block. The pair of them, like their thighs just seem magnetically drawn to the ball. They just get absolutely anything and everything bar their hands on the ball to make a block. It's absolutely sensational, and he's a player that he's so he takes it so seriously. He genuinely sees defending as an art form. He sees it as beautiful. I think he said destruction. Is another form of creation. So he says out of the war you can take something good and you can build from it. And this is a guy who will commit 45 minutes of work on Y Scout. He'll sit doing what we would do for writing an article, sitting going in depth on his opposing attackers, committing all that to memory, and then taking that into a game with him. And then because he knows he's lost his pace a bit, he can read it. He's so intelligent on the pitch and away from it. And yeah, he's been one of my favourite players for years. To be, I know it's Rich saying this when he's just come off the back of an international tournament win, but I genuinely love the guy. I think he's one of the best defenders of his generation, up there with Ramos and Thiago Silva. So definitely deserves the credit he's getting.
Hello. Sorry, I had another technical glitch there, but I'm glad.
Did you catch me? Did you catch the end of that? Yeah,
I did catch the end of it. Yeah, I was just a bit worried that I was gone again, but I'm still here. I'm sure you're delighted to hear that. I think with Chiellini, I mean, first of all, we've spoken about this privately. I can't believe that he wasn't 36 9 years ago in the last Euro final that Italy contested, the fact that it hasn't been 36 all this time. I mean, I didn't expect him to be any older, but I can't remember him ever not being that age. It just seems like he's always been a veteran. And when I knew that Chiellini was a class man, when Juventus knocked Spurs out the Champions League, well, it's just in the history of Tottenham. Yeah, and the fact that he gives fantastic interviews in English despite never having played in England is also pretty impressive. It just seems like Jack said, a very intelligent man, a great defender, and perhaps the sort of last generation of great defenders. Obviously, the game has evolved in lots of ways, and he hasn't lost that in any way. Some of his passing out the back was great last night, but I don't know if we'll see defenders quite like those two for a while yet. But hopefully, because defending, like Jack said, is an art form, and destruction breeds creation, or something. I don't know what he said, but it sounded lovely anyway, Jack.
Good to know I had your attention captured, Sean, at least.
It was something like that. I don't know. You don't need to get quotes right all the time, do you? Paraphrase. We'll talk about penalties now. I said this to you guys. I thought this was really all or nothing because, of course, England have a particularly interesting sort of history with penalty shootouts. And either them winning a major tournament for the first time in 55 years on penalties would have been the worst possible outcome for me personally. But them losing it on penalties and again having that heartache at Wembley in front of everyone was quite a pleasant thought for me. So it was kind of, we're at two ends of the spectrum there heading into this penalty shootout. And I thought it was a very entertaining one, Struan. Harry Maguire, by the way.
What a penalty. That was
quite a penalty, and I didn't expect it from him. But would Harry Maguire have been on your list of takers? Probably not.
No, I think we were messaging in our group chat as well before, who we thought we were going to take them, and I didn't have Harry Maguire anywhere near. He's quite a technical player, but I didn't think he could take a penalty. I mean, I love watching it back, and the camera quite literally breaks outside of the right foot, smashes it into the top right hand corner. Was it just luck from a centre half or something? But and the fact he was second right after Italy had just missed as well, I thought that was really impressive to us. I didn't expect him to be so early in the pecking order, but there he was stepping up. I think he is one of the leaders in that team, as well as likes of Harry Kane and Jordan Henderson. So he probably did put his name forward. But what a penalty! Honestly, it was ridiculous, to be honest. Probably the best penalty of the tournament out of all the ones we've seen in play and in the shootouts.
Paul Pogba's was great as well, wasn't it?
Pogba's was nice, but Pogba does that annoying wee run up that you just want him to smash the ball. That was the thing about Maguire. You can't really tell if has he meant to place it there or has he just sort of smashed it. Classic centre half. You maybe give him the benefit of the doubt.
I give him the benefit of the doubt. Why no? Jack, I think that for me personally, when of course Marcus Rashford missed his and then Jadon Sancho missed the fourth, and it was Jorginho going up to get the fifth. To me, the game was done. There's no way Jorginho was missing that penalty because we've seen him do it so many times. He scored the winning penalty, of course, against Spain in the semi-final. And that little hop, skip and jump, it just seems to work every single time for the Italian midfielder. And I'm sure we'll get on to this later on. For me, he's been the best player at the Euros. He's been my player of the tournament. And I just thought it was so fitting for him to wrap that up and score the winning penalty. So I was in genuine disbelief when that game came. That shot came off Jordan Pickford and then the post, because it was just, to me, it seemed like there was no better man in the world to take that penalty shootout than Jorginho at that point.
No, I mean, I've seen my fair bit. I mean, he was Chelsea's top scorer in the Premier League, having scored 7 goals, all from penalties. So we don't really need to talk about Jorginho more in this situation. I think we need to talk about Pickford because he does what a lot of keepers don't do, and he wasn't sold by it at all. He stood firm on his line and waited for Jorginho to make the move rather than the opposite, because he saw Simon in the Spanish shootout, he moved and then Jorginho had his hop and he was like, right, well, I put it bottom right because he goes to his right. So Jorginho's usually the one to wait for the keeper to move, but Pickford stared him down and didn't move until the ball was kicked, and it came off very well. And I mean, I'd imagine, considering Jorginho's calibre, he will have had that in his mind from as soon as they got through to the final and knew they were facing Italy. he knew that there was potentially a fairly high chance that he was going to face Jorginho at penalties, and he made sure that he had himself covered, Jordan Pickford, and he absolutely did, and it came off. But I was like you, Sean. I was sitting in the pub with my mates, and Jorginho stepping up. So I was like, well, that's Italy won. That's it, done. I'm brilliant. And then comes off Pickford, off the post, and you think, okay, this could go either way at this point. You don't really know what happens. What happened next, and it went the way that a number of us in this stream and in the chat, I'm sure, wanted it to, but it was all just kind of thrown up into the air for a wee minute at that point.
How about now?
Okay, that's
There we go. I just said that you guys looking awfully blank, and I thought that does happen sometimes when I speak. But so I don't know what came through there. If anything came through of what I said, did you hear anything I said after Jack spoke?
Not a word.
So what I did say was I was alluding to a comment there that said no Ireland or tiny Scotland in the Euros was there, and I just wanted to give everyone a quick reminder that Ireland, Scotland and England have won the same number of European championships. Jack did say there that what happened next happened next. What happened next was Bukayo Saka had seen his penalty saved by Gianluigi Donnarumma, and that obviously meant that Italy were the champions of Europe. Struan, there's been a lot of chat about having a 19-year-old who has never taken a senior penalty before take the fifth and final penalty against Italy in the finals of the European Championships. I have some thoughts on the whole narrative around it. I think you know. But tell me your thoughts, because I think it's a very interesting discussion. I'm interested to see what people in the chat think as well, trying to take the sort of English emotion out of it. But what do you think about the fact that Bukayo Saka was the last man in that penalty shootout?
I think at the time, a lot of people were surprised, and I think rightly so. You know, there's a lot of experienced players in that team, and a 19-year-old comes up to take the decisive penalty, really. You know, I think a lot of people probably thought it was over, as we said, when Jorginho stepped up, Pickford saved it. I think I should just say Pickford had a really good game, to be honest. I think he deserves credit. Saving 2 penalties is pretty impressive in the shootout. But when Saka stepped up, I think there was quite a lot of surprise. I think just prior to that as well, the fact that Rashford and Sancho had been subbed on purely to take penalties and had both missed, I think that was quite a few eyebrows raised. You know, why was that substitution made so late? You know, I don't even think Sancho touched the ball before the shootout. And then a 19-year-old steps up. Again, we were sort of saying in our group chat who we think was going to be in the list to take the penalties. You know, quite often you see experienced players. You know, if you look over to the Italian side of things, Bonucci, I think, took number 3, and that was probably Bonucci's was the most important of the entire shootout, in my opinion, because just after that, England had gone 2-1 up. If he misses, they have the 3-1 advantage potentially, and it's pretty much over from there. And obviously, Bonucci's a centre half. He's a pretty good technical player, but you know, you're never going to say, oh, stick him on a penalty, he'd be the first choice. But he did step up and he did it. So there is that element of being, you know, experienced to take the penalty. But I think a lot of people were questioning. I think Grealish and Sterling have been the two who a lot of people have named. I think Roy Keane came out and said it. And Jack Grealish just actually responded on Twitter by saying he wanted to take a penalty. He was happy to, but that wasn't the decision. Southgate said last night, you know, it was decided because of training. So I can understand why Saka was taking a penalty. You know, he's a really, really good player. You know, of course, he's 19, so there is the element of, you know, he's inexperienced. It's his first ever professional penalty. What a time to do it. I see both sides of the argument, to be perfectly honest, because at the same time, if he's put 15 out of 15 away in training the previous week, obviously you want him to step up and take one. But at the same time, do you need to take a thought and say, right, he is only 19. If he does miss this could be really bad for him. He's going to get a lot of stick and abuse on social media. There's other players in the squad. You know, I don't know if possibly someone like Jordan Henderson possibly could have stayed on. I thought that was quite an interesting substitution, because I know he doesn't really take penalties, but again, he's one of the leaders in the team. He's probably one of the most composed there. Could he have taken a penalty? I think it's harsh to blame anybody, really. A penalty shootout is what it is at the end of the day. You know, I think the blame probably will go towards Southgate for the decision of who took the penalties at the end of the day. But I mean, maybe we should just be giving praise to Donnarumma for saving it. Do you know what I mean? I think it's really tough. But I do see both sides of the argument. Saka, he is only 19. It's such a shame to put that kind of responsibility on his shoulders. But at the same time, he's a really good player. He could be a great penalty taker for all we know behind the scenes. It's just a tough one, really.
Jack, your thoughts?
I mean, there was a comment just earlier when we were talking about Maguire from David Futcher, I hope I pronounced that right, saying penalties are mostly about experience and keeping a cool head. Maguire has both. And I think in that situation, you said it yourself, Sean, Bukayo Saka has never taken a professional penalty in his life in a game situation. So there's not really any less experience you could have. And then keeping a cool head. When you're 19 years old and you've got the weight of 60 million people on your shoulders with one kick of the ball, that's an immense pressure that a lot of people would not be able to deal with. And it's just, for me, I feel really bad. I feel bad for both him, Sancho, and Rashford, because as soon as each of them missed, I knew what was going to follow. And I think I felt empathetic towards them because of the impending tirade of idiocy that was to follow each of their missed penalties. But I think the blame has to lie with Southgate, because Struan said it, despite the fact he might have put 15 from 15 away in training, he needs to look at the bigger picture here and think, these are 3 young guys who are going to be England's future. They shouldn't have this weight on their shoulders this early. We should give it to someone like Sterling, who's been fantastic throughout the entire tournament. Someone like Grealish, who I know Southgate doesn't potentially have the highest opinion of Grealish, but surely he's someone that's confident. He wants to take a penalty. You see that when he plays. He's one of the most confident players in the park at all times. He should be taking that penalty. And I think the fact that it laid to Saka, and fair enough, Southgate did go over and was consoling him afterwards. I think anyone would have done the same, to be honest. But I think he's rightly come out and said that he holds responsibility for the penalty takers, because realistically, I don't really see it going any other way, and I think he should be to blame for it.
Yeah, and I mean, I made the joke last night when we were talking, but genuinely, for a teenager to have a manager who's gone through that almost exact experience in a semi-final, Gareth Southgate has received a lot of criticism for that missed penalty against Germany. I think he'll do a very good job, as he has done throughout the tournament, of sort of defending his players and defending their right to make their voices heard, and defending everyone in England, not just a sort of a majority. I think that Gareth Southgate will do a good job of protecting Bukayo Saka in that sense. Of course, he won't have gone through the same racial abuse that we know Bukayo Saka, Jadon Sancho, Marcus Rashford have all been getting since they missed those penalties. Unfortunately, that's a sad reality of football at this moment in time, that if a black player makes a mistake, misses a penalty, concedes a goal, whatever it may be, scores a goal, and opposition fans will jump on him. Excuse me. But I'm going to have to take a drink of water. I do apologise, but my throat's actually gone there. I'm back. No, I'm not. So, what I was trying to say there before I sort of got halfway towards death was that, for me, if Bukayo Saka's in the squad and Gareth Southgate's seen them day in, day out, and Raheem Sterling's not a particularly good penalty taker. I mean, Manchester City have had their penalty troubles. Jack Grealish, does he take them for Villa? I'm not 100% sure. I think that Ollie Watkins, I've seen him take a penalty before. So if he's, like Struan said, if he's in training, if he's been given reason to think Bukayo Saka is capable of scoring that penalty, and Saka's shown up in the big moments. I mean, he was Arsenal's player of the season despite being so young. He got man of the match on his Euros debut against the Czech Republic. I think that Saka has come up for Gareth Southgate when he's needed him, and I don't think, just because of his age and his inexperience, I don't think Southgate should be criticised for putting him in that situation because of that. I mean, I think it doesn't. Anyone could have missed that penalty. Anyone could have scored that penalty, and I just think that to sort of crucify Southgate or Saka for being in that situation, when you're part of that squad, that's all you can do, is you can pick the players for the time. And I just think that to be so critical of Southgate for putting a youngster in that position, he's a professional footballer, and I know it's a lot of pressure. But it's so easy that, say, Jack Grealish takes penalty number 5. And he skies it over the bar. You could go, folk might be saying, well, Saka's never let Southgate down. Saka's played fantastically. He's fully confident. He seems to do well under pressure. Like I said, Arsenal's player of the season, man of the match, did fantastically at his GCSEs, as we know, thanks to the coverage during games that didn't involve England. he comes up in pressure moments previously, and I understand that it's a very extreme level of pressure. And I agree with JJ Soko, who's coming in there saying training penalties and tournament penalties are not the same. You put your experienced guys first. I do understand that, but I think that Southgate has done a good job of not listening to sort of external voices and always doing what him and I'm sure his team and Steve Holland and the likes think is best. And I just think that penalties are... I don't agree with penalties being a lottery, but I think that penalties are sort of the finest of margins. And I think that I mean, if Donnarumma dives the wrong way and that goes in, we're having a completely different conversation. I know that I'm talking about hypotheticals here, but I just think to get so caught up on those individual decisions is a bit extreme. I don't know. I think Saka will bounce back. I think he's a great player. But I find it interesting the difference in discussion between Saka and Sancho, considering that they've both never taken senior penalties, and there's only 2 years between them. I mean, Sancho's a kid as well, and Marcus Rashford's been around for a long time now, and he acts more adult than a lot of leaders in this country. So we probably think that he's a lot older than he is, but he's 23 years old. And his penalty, I saw someone in the comments saying it was a really bad penalty. I thought it was pretty close. I mean, it hits the outside of the post. If that rifles into the bottom corner, then it's a completely different conversation and probably a different outcome as well in the entire tournament. So I think that I feel sorry for those players because they will be crucified for a long time, and I think that black players particularly, disappeared again. My mic likes turning off. I think that social media groups need to do more to stop this sort of abuse, but we're also talking about Wembley yesterday. I don't want to end this on a bad note, but the way that fans were able to rush the stadium yesterday. Jack, do we need to talk about fans in that situation, or do we need to think about stewarding? Because you can't look at individual stewards, and obviously it was a numbers situation that was the problem there. But where UEFA or whoever's in charge of sort of marshalling that, should they have had more numbers involved, or should we be looking at fans and thinking, how has this been allowed to happen?
I think I don't know if it necessarily comes into stewarding, because they are employed for the job that they have. They are there for the people in the stadium, and they're there to combat that. That I think it needs to come down to a heavier police presence, to be honest. And I know I don't like talking about it because it can get a bit over the top when it comes down to things like that. But if England are playing in the national final, we saw what they were like in the semi-final at Wembley. I think there should have been kind of plans in place for a heavier police presence just from the get. Because when you see this happening, the stewards can't really do much. I mean, they're just kind of normal guys in a high vis, like realistically, and they can easily just kind of get overpowered by 5 or 6 England fans at full speed. So I mean, there's not really much they can do, and it's just a really, really sour way to close out England's tournament, because they've had a really good tournament, taking any objectivity out of it completely. England have had a great tournament. I think it's a likeable team. There's a lot of really talented players in this team, and I'm not even opposed to Gareth Southgate. I think he's a well-spoken guy, and he clearly has proved a lot of doubters wrong this tournament. But if this is a country that's wanting to put in a bid for the 2030 World Cup, I really don't think they're going to have much of a leg to stand on if these are the scenes that are happening amongst their own fans, keep in mind, and at their own national stadium when England are in the national final at a time that really should be a celebration for the country.
Yeah, and I mean, Euro 2020 has been fantastic, and it's a shame to see that some people who'd bought tickets for the game yesterday had their seats taken, and then for whatever reason, stewards weren't allowed to let people leave the ground, so he had this sort of overflow of people, which is worrying. We know in the past in football, when situations like that happen, that the sort of tragedy that can bring. So I'm glad that it seems like everyone was safe in the end, but I think it could have been. I'm just glad that nothing went wrong, but you need to sort of think that, I mean, fans rushing the stadium in that way, I don't think you can justify it at all. I mean, people want to, of course, be there for their team win a major tournament, but if you haven't got a ticket for the game, then just enjoy it with your pals in a pub somewhere, or The atmosphere in England yesterday, despite some of the poor scenes, I'm sure a lot of people had a great day with their friends and family in the build up to that game, and you could have done it in such a different way and still had those memories without having to create what could potentially be a very dangerous situation. Struan, let's round this up by talking about Italy. They're champions of Europe. They're on a fantastic unbeaten run. Do you think that they can do something sort of going forward now? Do you think they'll head into the World Cup in just 18 months, which is going to be a pretty quick turnaround? Do you think they can go into that as one of the favourites? Do you expect them to be challenging for that? Or do you think that perhaps with the likes of Bonucci and Chiellini getting that year older, and the fact that Italy were somewhat sort of coming under the radar heading into this tournament, we've now seen in front of the world just how good they are? Do you think that teams might come into them with a sort of more strategic game plan in 18 months in Qatar?
Yeah, I think there's definitely an element of, at the start of the tournament, I don't think many people had them as the out-and-out favourite. I think a lot more people were looking at likes of France, Belgium and England to begin with at the beginning, because they didn't even qualify for the 2018 World Cup 3 years ago, which is quite incredible when you think about how good this team have been under Mancini, how good some of the players are. And a lot of the players in the current squad were there in 2018. They've not had many players who've suddenly come out of nowhere. Chiesa probably being one of the exceptions, maybe someone like Spinazzola breaking in as well, Barella. But I think they really are a top team. I think when we saw them in the very first game against Turkey, I think they made a lot of people take notice and say, this is a fantastic team. They've got quality all over the pitch, as we saw throughout the tournament. Goals can come from anywhere. I think there is the point that Chiellini and Bonucci are getting a bit older, but at the same time, I don't expect them to be going anywhere anytime soon. I'd look at somebody like Pepe for Portugal, who played in this Euros at 38. I don't think either of them are really going to stop. And what we kind of pointed out to earlier on the show was they've developed their games to the point now where they read the game so well, they don't need that pace to catch up to an attacker. As long as they're marking the space, their movement can take two players out of the game at once, as we saw last night. And I think even at 37, 38, 35 for Bonucci's case they'll be next year, I don't think they'll really be stopping, to be honest. I think as well, they've got a club level, both of them played for Juventus. They've now got determination to fight back and win their title back, of course, losing it to Inter Milan. So there probably is quite a lot of motivation now. They're showing people how good a team they are. With Mancini, in terms of the international stage, they've probably got one of the best managers in it currently. So I think this Italian team has a really good future. And as I said, there are some younger players breaking through. I'm not sure who's going to come into that defence. Somebody like Bastoni, perhaps, of Inter Milan, is maybe the one to break up Chiellini and Bonucci. Of course, Barzagli quite recently as well. We talked about him. Italy have always had fantastic centre-halves. In our generation and previous generation, they've always had fantastic defenders. Up front, possibly they do need a new striker to come in. We've spoken about Immobile, who for Lazio is one of the best strikers in Europe, it seems. And then for Italy, it's a totally different story, really. It looks out of place, but they've still got great attackers like Berardi and Chiesa, who are young. Insigne, I think, is about 28, 29. He'll still be there. And their midfield is, in terms of the international stage, it's second to none, really. The fact that Jorginho, Barella, Verratti was the first choice three players like Locatelli, Cristante, they've just got so much talent in that area. Young talent as well in the likes of Locatelli. Somebody like Zaniola of Roma, who of course has had really bad injuries. He was the next big thing at one point, so I could definitely see him coming back into the tournament. I'd definitely keep my eye on Italy. And of course, Buffon, of course, 2006 World Cup winning goalkeeper, it seemed he was going to stay there forever. And as soon as he's left, in comes Donnarumma, who won the player of the tournament, and he's still only 22. And in all honesty, he could be in that position for another 20 years. The way Buffon's gone, the way goalkeepers are going these years, is such an experienced goalkeeper. I think he's already made around 280 appearances for a goalkeeper at 22. And there's always the argument that 22 for a goalkeeper is like 19 for an outfield player because it's such a different position. So he's such a young player there. They've got exciting talent all over the pitch. And I think Italy really are cementing themselves back as being one of the elites. One of the first tournaments that I can actually remember watching was the 2006 World Cup. Of course, Italy went on to win that in penalties as well against France at the time. And, I was brought up thinking, Italy and Brazil, they're the two giants of world football. But then they've sort of faded away. They made it to the final in 2012, and that Spain team, we're not going to let anybody beat them. So they couldn't do anything about that. The 2014 World Cup wasn't the best tournament for them. The Euros in 2016 under Conte, it was okay. But even just thinking back, the two strikers in that team were Eder and Graziano Pelle. And the front line that they have now just looks miles better than it was back then. Players like Darmian, of course, as well, was in that team, who follows the Premier League, will know for a pretty poor spell at Manchester United, back winning with Inter Milan again. And I think Mancini's come in, and so many players now have just developed to the point where I'm really excited by Italy. I think there's such an enjoyable team, such a likable team. As we spoke about Bonucci and Chiellini, they're a joy to watch. If anybody likes watching good defenders, if there's any young defenders out there wanting to get into the game and they're thinking, who should I watch? Who should I base my game off? The two prime examples, they're playing together. Unbelievable partnership for club and country. And yeah, I am really looking forward to it. And we seem to have lost Sean here, but
I'll try and kind of bridge that gap until Mr. McGill does come back. I know you mentioned Donnarumma, the Player of the Tournament award. That surprised me a little bit. I'm not going to lie. I thought it might have gone to someone else, potentially an outfield player, someone like Jorginho, as Sean said, or maybe even Raheem Sterling, who's been massively consistent.
I think if England had won, Sterling would have won it. For a big call for myself, I think he would have won it had England won the tournament there.
Yeah, no, that would make sense. That would definitely make a lot of sense. But before we kind of get on to the chat of the tagline of who makes the team of the tournament, I suppose we can just touch on the future of England as well, because I know we've said that the guys that missed the penalties, the three guys, are all young, 23, 21 and 19 respectively. What they do have ahead of them is another 18 months before the next tournament, in which realistically these players are all going to get better. There's no real old hats in that England team. You're kind of looking towards kind of Kane and Henderson kind of pushing 30 when you're thinking of kind of the older statesmen of this England team, leaders, and Raheem Sterling, who's 26 years old. It's as a Scotsman, it's a worry to see a kind of England team rife with kind of raw talent and talent that's really going to be honed over the next couple of years ahead of Qatar.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting is I believe the oldest player in that squad is Kyle Walker, who just turned 31 back in May, which is pretty incredible to be the oldest player. And even if you think, oh, will he not make the World Cup next time? In comes either Trent or Alexander-Arnold or Reece James. It's ridiculous how young and talented that team is. Even in the goalkeeping department, somebody like Dean Henderson's coming through is only 24 himself. If Pickford ever does stop or not get pulled up for the next squad or called up for the next squad.
Nick Pope, obviously, as an option who was injured for this tournament, but he's still the right side of 30 for this kind of squad.
Yeah, I believe he's 1992, so he'll either be 28 or 29 at the moment, but I could easily see him coming back. I think he would have been in the squad had he not suffered an injury towards the end of last season that kept him out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which allowed, even Aaron Ramsdale, I think, is 1998 he was born, so he's a young goalkeeper as well. And we talk about, there's quite a lot of debate in the Premier League about these talented youngsters, the likes of Foden, Mount, Saka, Greenwood, other players who didn't get the call up to the squad, like Callum Hudson-Odoi, Dwight McNeil of Burnley is a really talented one. There's so much young talent coming through, even in that midfield area. Declan Rice himself is only 22, and somebody like Jude Bellingham, who looks like he could be one of the best midfielders in world football in a few years' time himself, just turned 18. I think there is a lot of reasons to be optimistic about this England squad, and it seems like they are getting over quite a few hurdles. In 2018, they made it to the semi-final, but what was really significant about that is that they'd won the penalty shootout against Colombia, something that they struggled to do for many years. In this tournament, they've sort of gotten over the hurdle of getting to the final. Fair enough, they did have the home advantage, and I think a lot of people would say they were the easy side of the bracket in terms of the route that they made to go to the final. So, but I think there is a lot of reasons for England fans to be excited about this team. I think they'll definitely be back, and they are sort of now they're developing themselves as a team who we expect to go to the latter stages of a tournament, which is credit to them. But at the same time, you just never know at tournament football how good Spain are looking as well. It's another team who have sort of been quiet for a few years. They seem to be having a lot of good players coming through. They could be back in the world stage. France never seem to stop producing world-class talent in every position on the pitch. They could be right back up there. Look at Argentina winning the Copa America. The next World Cup, they could be a force. Lionel Messi is on track for 7th Ballon d'Or this year. I don't think he's going to be leaving the Argentinian team anytime soon. Team like Brazil as well. So I think there's a lot of competition, but I think I'd be optimistic if I was an England fan. There's a lot of talent in that team. I think Southgate, for all the criticism he has, I think he had a flawless tournament up until the final. Every call he made may have been seen as controversial, maybe the wrong call. At the end of the day, they got to the final, and yeah, I think there will be a real force in years to come.
Do we have Sean? Are you back fully? Is this you?
I mean, I could be. We don't know for how long, so make the most of it while you can, Jack. Because yeah, I mean, it's our last show, and I'm getting punted out. My throat's seizing up. It was just a pretty good way to round off the State of the Euros, and I did want to. How I wanted to do that was spending a decent amount of time talking about our teams of the tournament. We're going to have to do that at a much faster pace than I expected, but that's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. And I'm very, very keen for people in the chat to get involved with their picks. So as we're going through each sort of position, it'd be great if you could give us your picks for those positions, your thoughts on who deserves to be in the team of the tournament. Myself and Colin Watt did this on the Football Insomniac on Friday, which is of course available on demand on A State of Mind's YouTube channel. But I thought it'd be interesting to get the thoughts of Struan and Jack, and there's at least one change to my team from Friday. So what changes in 2 days? Let's find out, because it's right at the start. Because I did initially have Jan Sommer as my goalkeeper in this team, but I think it's impossible to ignore Gianluigi Donnarumma after his 2 penalty shootouts. He's pulled off some big saves. Of course, he got the UEFA Player of the Tournament as well. So are you two in agreement with that? Is Donnarumma your goalkeeper in the team of the tournament?
I think it has to be. You know, if a goalkeeper wins Player of the Tournament, I think they should probably go down as the goalkeeper who has been the best goalkeeper of the tournament, to be honest. He doesn't have the most clean sheets, but at the same time, as you said, back-to-back penalty shootout victories. He's only 22. I think he's probably the youngest starting goalkeeper in this entire tournament as well. So massive credit to him.
Yep, completely agree with what Struan said. I know Pickford walked away with the Golden Glove, but I think Cameron and Wanstall and I, we kind of had this discussion on another episode when Sean was off in his hollybobs. He makes a lot of kind of camera saves, does Pickford, and he did what he needed to do, but I think Donnarumma was just more impressive overall, and I think he does deserve a space in the team of the tournament. Sommer a close second though for me, because I feel like what he did was absolutely fantastic.
And Kasper Schmeichel as well, I think, deserves a shout out. I think he had some great performances and also carried himself like a leader in a lot of those moments, and also gave that great press conference where he asked, has it ever been home? No, and it still has not. Let's get to left back, because I think it's an interesting one. There's lots of options here, and perhaps less so on the other flank, so it'll be interesting to see how you pair have combated that one. I'll start with Jack this time. So people in the comments, if you want to let us know your left back in the team the tournament.
Oh, this was tough. Well, I don't know what was more tough, having a left back pick or having a right back pick, because in my mind there are 3 standout left backs from this tournament and not really any right backs, and just Stein potentially would be Vladimir Koufal for the Czech Republic as kind of standout right back. But I have put 2 left backs in my team, 1 at right back. My left back, I've given it to Luke Shaw, to be honest. I think he's just been massively impressive for Southgate in England, proving a lot of the papers wrong. Obviously thought the goal didn't matter for much in the end, but I think Struan's probably in agreement with me on that, but it easily could have gone to Joaquin Mela, or I'll just say I'll put Leonardo Spinazzola at right back to just fill that gap, because I think had he not been injured in the quarter-final, was it the quarter-final or the semi-final he got injured? Remind me.
Quarter-final.
Had it not been for that injury, I think Italy would have had a much easier time of it in both the semi and the final.
And Struan, how have you managed to get Luke Shaw in?
I've done it the exact same way as Jack there. I had the 3, Mela, Spinazzola and Luke Shaw. I've given it to Luke Shaw, and because Spinazzola is right-footed, I thought there's maybe a reason for him to be as the right back, because I think maybe Dumfries and Koufal, we touched on, are possibly the only 2 who you could say for right back, but again, neither of them were really standouts in that position. You know, I believe Mele plays right back for Atalanta, but he was sort of more into the left-hand side for Denmark. So I've gone Spinazzola on the right, and I've gone Luke Shaw on the left.
So I got some criticism for this on Friday's show, but I have again left out Luke Shaw. And for me, I've gone with Spinazzola left back and Mela right back. And for me, when I pick sort of teams of tournament team this season, I prefer to go on sort of the eye test rather than just stats. Like, I think Luke Shaw has had a great tournament, has been fun to watch, but in terms of sheer excitement of sort of players who have really caught my eye and taken my interest, I would say that Spinazzola and Mela have done that more for me, and I think that Mela was so key to the attacking play of Denmark, and I think if you had any question marks over his quality, that outside of the boot assist for Kasper Dolberg in the quarter-final against the Czech Republic just sums up what a good player he will be for Atalanta, who probably were the best represented team at this tournament. I mean, I think that so many players who perhaps go under the radar. You saw that they would come through, and I think that Mela shows the sort of great scouting department and everything that goes right for that team, and how they've gone from sort of a fairly mid-ranking Serie A team to now regular Champions League qualifiers. And Spinazzola was just so fun to watch. I mean, the way he played football, the way he interpreted that role was just to hug that touchline. It baffled defenders with coming inside on that right foot as well. There was no predicting what he would do. I was very worried when he got injured. But I think that and Emerson was certainly a downgrade. I think you saw that in those games. But Spinazzola, it's a shame he's going to wait for so long, because it would have been a big, big season for him. I'm sure Jose Mourinho was looking forward to using him at Roma. But I'm sure when he gets back, there'll be a lot of eyes on him to see if he can sort of pick up that form again. Let's move on to centre backs. I think there's a sort of pool of maybe 4 or 5 that you could pick for this position. Who have you gone with, Struan?
I've gone for the 2 Italian gladiators. I think they've been labelled by quite a few. I think Bonucci and Chiellini deserve it. They've been flawless this whole tournament. Suffering an injury, of course, Chiellini in the second group game had to come back in. They've been absolutely incredible. I think there's other names like Simon Kjær, Christensen, Maguire, Stones, who could all have a justified shout here. Laporte, another one. But for me, I think it has to be the 2 Italians. I think they were absolutely phenomenal. And I think, on the subject of player of the tournament, I think you could say Bonucci or Chiellini were player of the tournament, and I don't think you could have any complaints.
The Judabides is coming in the comments there saying Stones and Bonucci would be his choice. Jimmy Duff says Grant Hanley. I find it very hard not to include Mr. Hanley in that one. Jack, who have you put at the back?
Well, I mean, when you match Mbappe for pace, it's really hard to overlook Grant Hanley, but I have on this occasion. I've gone for Bonucci and Kjær, and I know having lavish praise on Chiellini earlier in this show, it seems ludicrous that I would leave him out of that team, but I feel like Bonucci's ever-present stature at this tournament. He's kind of always been in the back line. Chiellini did miss those 2 games, and I think Kjær has done an absolutely fantastic job of leading his country on and off the pitch. He was the first guy to... He saved Eriksen's life. He made sure he didn't swallow his tongue. He put him in the recovery position. He did everything he possibly could to make sure that man, his teammate, survived, and then was the first over to his girlfriend. Unfortunately, we saw those pictures from the broadcast, but you just saw the kind of man that Kjær is. And I mean, even without that, he was great. I think that own goal against England potentially might overshadow his inclusion for a lot of people in their team of the tournament. But I think he definitely needs to be in there for me anyway.
I've gone the exact same as you, Jack. Bonucci and Kjær. Partly as well for those incredible scenes from the Dane. I'll go back to Jack, actually. How have you interpreted the midfield? I've got a midfield three personally.
I've gone a 4-4-2.
Yeah.
I did do this, and then I didn't really know how to, whether I want to commit to it, but I've got it in my notes, and I'll just say it as I've got it, to be honest.
Tell me.
I've got a midfield pairing of Pedri and Jorginho. On the left, I've got Sterling, and on the right, I've got Federico Chiesa.
I like it. Mine's is pretty similar to that. Struan, what have you got?
I've gone for a 3 in the midfield, and my 3 in the midfield are Højbjerg, Pedri, and the last decision I decided I had to add one of the 3 Italian midfielders, and I genuinely couldn't decide between the 3 of them, but I've just stuck with Jorginho because I think he played the most. Between Barella or Verratti could easily have had that spot, but I've gone for those 3.
Yeah, thank you. I was worried you were going to miss out Jorginho there. But so no surprise that I have Jorginho. Barella is in front of him for me, and also Pedri, who I'm sure we'd agree would be our young player of the tournament because 18 years old, Spain's best player. And I think you can get very, very excited about him in the same way they are about Federico Chiesa, who's in Jack's team. He's my right mid, and Raheem Sterling's my left mid, same as Jack. What about you, Struan?
Yeah, Sterling on the left with Chiesa on the right for me.
And up front, I feel like there's one man who you could go for here, but I'd be interested if there's other. Struan's got a cheeky smile on his face there. I'm a bit worried. Jack, who have you got?
Two up front for me, CR7 and Patrick Schick, the joint Golden Boot winner, as it should be. It shouldn't go to one of them. Get them both.
Struan?
I've gone for the Golden Boot winner in Cristiano Ronaldo as my striker up front.
That's
in all
honesty of you.
Do you know, I've written my team down in a bit. I keep looking to it in this idea just to make sure. And I've had Schick and I've had Ronaldo twice, and I keep crossing them out and replacing it with the other one. But I went for Ronaldo in the end.
For me, Cristiano Ronaldo did score goals, but I don't think he had a great tournament. I don't think he played particularly well in any games. I didn't watch any game thinking that was a good performance from Ronaldo, whereas Patrick Schick was pretty dominant, and I loved the way that he bullied defenders, apart from against Scotland, in a lot of those games. So I think that I think it has to be Patrick Schick. He gets the centre forward role in my team because I think his all round play, he scored the same number of goals, and all round play was better from Patrick Schick. We're on 12 o'clock, so I want to very quickly ask you, player of the tournament, rapid fire, Jack.
Simon Kjaer for me.
Struan?
Bonucci.
I'm going Jorginho. Goal of the tournament, Jack?
Schick versus Scotland, has to be.
Struan?
Dalsgaard against England.
Mine is Karim Benzema against Switzerland for that touch.
Yes.
Absolutely beautiful. Absolutely gorgeous. And that wraps up the State of the Euros. I want to say thank you very much for everyone who's joined us over the past month or so. It's been great to talk about probably the best tournament of our lifetime, I would say. Been very, very enjoyable, and it's so amazing to have fans back in stadiums. It makes such a difference. We're seeing it in Scotland now as well, and hopefully it's a sign of things to come, and we can all enjoy the sport we love that little bit more. I want to say thank you to everyone who's joined us on the show, my sort of regular panellists, including these two, as well as Cameron Wanstall, Amy Canavan and Colin Watts joined me on one of those shows as well. We've had some great expert guests who have joined us to give their insight on the nations they cover or follow. So we really, really appreciate their insight. It's really added to the show. And once again, thank you to all for watching. There's perhaps something in the pipeline that means you might be seeing our faces a little bit more on this network. So we're sorry about that, but we look forward to it. And we hope to see you as the football season gets underway. So thank you very much for joining us, and we'll hopefully see you again soon. Ciao.